Tonight, as you rest, let your mind wander far away from the present. Let the worries of the day grow softer, like fading ink on an ancient page. Imagine yourself in a quiet room, lit by a single, gentle lamp. The air is warm and still, and before you there is a great scroll, a doorway to another time this evening. We will step softly into the world of two great libraries, Alexandria and Nineveh, places where countless words once lived, places where human memory was stored on fragile papyrus and on clay tablets, long before our modern shelves and printed books. You don't need to hold onto every detail. Just listen. Let the story drift over you, like pages turning softly in the dark. Segment 1. The idea of a library in the stillness of the ancient world. A library was not only a place for reading, it was a treasury of memory, centuries. Before printing presses, books were hand-copied scrolls, and every word was precious. In places like Alexandria and Nineveh, scribes bent over desks by the light of oil lamps, their reeds dipping into ink, tracing letters slowly, carefully. The sound of the outside world, footsteps on stone, waves on the shore, was faint. Inside, only the soft whisper of writing tools could be heard. Segment 2. The Library of Alexandria. The Library of Alexandria, founded in the 3rd century BCE, was not a single grand hall, but a collection of buildings, lecture rooms, gardens, and reading chambers. It was part of the Mauseon, a temple to the Muses, patron goddesses of the arts and sciences. Imagine the quiet courtyards, pillars of pale limestone, shaded walkways where philosophers strolled, discussing mathematics or astronomy, while others studied rare texts in the still rooms beyond. The library's shelves held thousands of scrolls, each carefully catalogued, some brought from ships that docked in the busy port. Captains were sometimes required to hand over any books aboard so they could be copied and stored. Segment 3. The quiet work of knowledge sighed the reading rooms. The air smelled faintly of papyrus and ink. Scrolls were unrolled on wide wooden tables, and scribes worked slowly, reading aloud in soft voices, their words echoing gently off the walls. Students from Greece, Egypt, India, and beyond came to study here. They copied works on medicine, maps of the stars, and tales of ancient kingdoms. No one rushed. Time felt different here. Knowledge moved at the pace of the hand, and the memory of the world was kept safe in careful ink strokes. Segment 4. Daily life in the Library of Alexandria. Life at the library was not filled with excitement, but with the gentle rhythm of study. In the mornings, sunlight filtered through latticed windows, falling in long golden beams across the reading tables. Scholars gathered in small groups, their voices hushed, discussing philosophy, mathematics, medicine, and the natural sciences. Couriers arrived from distant lands, bringing scrolls wrapped in soft cloth, the ink still fresh from the hands of foreign scribes. Each scroll was carefully examined, its words preserved, and then added to the growing collection. Meals were simple: bread baked in clay ovens, olives, figs, and a cup of watered wine. In the quiet afternoons, the work continued with more copying, reading, and patient translation. Segment 5. The atmosphere of Alexandria. The city of Alexandria itself was a place of light and learning. Its streets were wide, lined with white stone buildings that reflected the bright sun of the Mediterranean. The sound of the sea was never far away. From the library's grounds, you could hear the faint cry of gulls, and the soft hum of ships in the harbor. Merchants and travelers passed by the library gates, bringing news and stories from distant lands. In this constant exchange of goods and knowledge, the library stood as a quiet center of thought, a still place, holding the memory of the ancient world. Segment 6. The work of translation in one of the library's rooms. Scribes worked carefully to translate texts from every language they could find: Greek, Egyptian, Babylonian, Hebrew, Sanskrit. The words of many cultures were preserved side by side. This was a place where an Egyptian hymn could be copied in Greek, and a work of Indian mathematics could be studied by a scholar from the islands of Greece. Every word copied was a bridge, connecting one culture to another dot. And in the quiet, you could almost imagine all these voices whispering softly together. Across time. Segment 7. A gentle fade from Alexandria. As the years passed, the library grew. It became a place of quiet pride for Alexandria, and a beacon for scholars of the ancient world. We do not need to rush to speak of its fate tonight. The story of loss is quiet here, soft at the edges, like an old page faded by the sun. What matters is that, for centuries, the library was alive. Every day it welcomed knowledge, and every day it sent wisdom back out into the world. Segment 8. A journey to Nineveh, far to the east. Beyond the deserts and the rivers, there was another great library. The Library of Ashurbanipal in the ancient city of Nineveh was different from Alexandria. Here, knowledge was not written on papyrus scrolls, but pressed into clay tablets. The city of Nineveh was the heart of the Assyrian Empire, and Ashurbanipal, its king, was a ruler with a deep love of learning. Segment 9. The Palace Library of Ashurbanipal. The library was housed within the palace, its rooms filled with shelves of clay tablets, each inscribed with wedge-shaped letters. Some tablets held histories of kings, others described battles and treaties. Many contained stories and myths, tales of gods, of creation, of floods and heroes. There were also works on medicine, astrology, mathematics, and the careful records of trade and farming. Unlike papyrus, these tablets were heavy and durable. They could survive fire and time, and so many of them still exist today, whispering to us across thousands of years. Segment 10. The daily work of Nineveh's scribes in Nineveh. The scribes worked in long, quiet rooms, shaping wet clay with a small stylus, pressing each mark with steady hands. The air was dry, and the smell of earth and stone filled the space. When the text was complete, the tablets were dried in the sun and carefully stored on shelves. There was no rush. Each word was pressed slowly, like planting seeds in the soil of memory. Segment 11. The knowledge within Nineveh. The tablets of Nineveh held not only the stories of the Assyrians, but also the writings of older civilizations: Sumerians, Babylonians, Akkadians. These were works passed down, copied and preserved, so that the knowledge of the ancient Mesopotamian world was kept safe within the palace walls. In the quiet of the library, a scholar could read the story of Gilgamesh, the measurements of the stars, or the ways to heal a fever. Knowledge flowed through these tablets like a slow, steady river. Segment 12. The quiet legacy of both libraries, both Alexandria and Nineveh, were places where the human desire to remember found a home, one by the blue waters of the Mediterranean, the other by the flowing Tigris River. Though the buildings are long gone, their spirit remains. In every library today, in every quiet room of books, there is something of Alexandria, and something of Nineveh. And now, as you rest, you can Imagine walking softly through their halls, past shelves of scrolls and tablets, past the quiet work tables, feeling the peaceful weight of history around you, closing, drifting into rest. The story of the lost libraries is not a story of endings, but of whispers that continue. Knowledge, once gathered, never truly disappears. It lingers, passed from one hand to another, from one age to the next. And so, as you close your eyes, you can drift peacefully, knowing that the words of the past still live quietly in the present. Let the sound of the story fade like a turning page. Let your breathing slow and your thoughts grow still. Segment 13, the Garden of the Mausian Beyond, the Reading Rooms of Alexandria. There was a garden, a quiet place filled with olive trees and fragrant herbs. Scholars would sometimes take their scrolls outside to read in the shade. The sound of bees drifted softly among the flowers, and the sea breeze carried a faint saltiness to the air. Segment 14. The map room of Alexandria. One chamber held maps of the known world, large scrolls carefully painted with coastlines and mountains, rivers and ports. Here, a student might trace a journey from Egypt to India, or study the shape of the Mediterranean, imagining faraway lands. Segment 15. The Room of Astronomy. Room held instruments for watching the sky's bronze armillary spheres, charts of constellations, and scrolls describing the movements of planets. At night, scholars sometimes gathered on the roof, marking the positions of the stars in careful detail. Segment 16. The Scriptorium. The scriptorium was a long, quiet hall where scribes copied texts by hand. The only sounds were the soft rasp of red pens and the turning of papyrus sheets. It was patient work, and no one hurried. Segment 17. Meals in the library. Grounds in the middle of the day. The scholars paused for a simple meal. Flat bread still warm from the oven, cheese wrapped in leaves, dates, figs, and a cup of cool water. Meals were eaten in the shade of the colonnades, in quiet conversation. Segment 18. Visitors to the library. Travelers from distant lands often visited the library. They brought strange books, and sometimes rare objects, bronze tools, carved stones, or painted pottery. These were placed in the library's collection as treasures of knowledge. Segment 19. The sound of the city. Even within the library walls, the sound of Alexandria sometimes reached the scholars. The distant call of merchants in the marketplace, the clatter of hooves on stone streets, and the soft rhythm of waves in the harbor. Segment 20. The walkways above the harbor. Some evenings, students walked along the upper terraces overlooking the harbor. Ships from Greece, Phoenicia, and beyond were anchored below. The smell of tar, salt, and spice filled the air. Segment 21. The lighthouse in the distance. From the library's courtyards, you could see the Pharaoh's lighthouse, its flames shining across the water. It stood as a symbol of guidance, much like the library itself. Segment 22. Scrolls from the ships arriving in Alexandria often carried books. By royal decree, these were copied for the library. The scribes worked quickly, and the originals were returned to their owners. Segment 23. The Hall of Poetry. One hall of the library was devoted to poetry and plays. Here were the works of Homer, the plays of Sophocles, and the songs of poets from across the ancient world. Segment 24. Philosophical debates. In shaded courtyards, philosophers sometimes debated quietly. There were no loud arguments, just soft discussion of ideas, shared with patience and curiosity. Segment 25. The Room of Medicine. In another part of the library, scrolls of medicine were kept. descriptions of herbs, methods of healing, and careful records of treatments. Physicians came here to study, hoping to ease the pain of the sick. Segment 26. Quiet nights in Alexandria. At night, the library was calm. The lamps were extinguished, and the rooms grew dark. Outside, the city slowed, and only the faint sound of the waves remained. Segment 27. Crossing to Nineveh. Now our story drifts eastward again, towards Nineveh. We follow the soft path of memory, to the palace of Ashurbanipal. Segment 28. The great gate of Nineveh. The city was entered through massive gates, decorated with carvings of lions and winged bulls. Within, the streets were wide, and the palace rose above them, its walls covered with detailed reliefs. Segment 29. The palace courtyard. The palace courtyard was peaceful. Garden plots with palm trees stood beside pools of water. The quiet sound of fountains carried through the air. Segment 30. The tablet rooms inside the library. Rows of shelves held clay tablets. Some were small enough to fit in a hand, others were as large as bricks. Each was marked with careful signs. Segment 31. The story of Gilgamesh. Among the tablets was the great epic of Gilgamesh, a story of a king, a friend, and a journey. Its words had been copied for centuries, preserving the voice of the distant past. Segment 32. Records of the stars. Other tablets recorded the stars. They marked eclipses, predicted the movements of planets, and noted omens seen in the night sky. Segment 33. The king's studio. Ashurbanipal himself was a scholar. He read the ancient scripts, and he ordered the collection of texts from across his empire. His study was filled with light and the smell of fresh clay. Segment 34. Scribes. At work in long, cool rooms, scribes pressed signs into wet clay. The steady tap of styluses was the music of the library. Segment 35. The healing texts of Nineveh. Many tablets described medicine, remedies for fevers, instructions for preparing herbs, and prayers to accompany healing. Segment 36. Lessons. For the future, other tablets contained wisdom literature, sayings about justice, about kindness, and about how a ruler should govern wisely. Segment 37. The Room of Histories. There were also records of past kings, lists of reigns, descriptions of battles, and accounts of building great temples. Segment 38. The Archive of Treaties. Another section of the library kept copies of treaties agreements with neighboring kingdoms, written carefully in cuneiform. Segment 39. Astronomy on the roof. Some evenings, scholars climbed to the roof of the palace to observe the sky. The stars shone over the city as they pressed their notes into clay. Segment 40. The silence of Nineveh. At night. At night, Nineveh was quiet. The river flowed softly beyond the walls, and the palace lay still, its shelves of tablets resting in the dark. Segment 41. A shared spirit of learning, though far apart. Alexandria and Nineveh shared a purpose: to gather, preserve, and share knowledge. They were mirrors of one another, shaped by different worlds. Segment 42. The whisper of pages and Claven. Now, if you imagine yourself there, you might hear it, the faint whisper of scrolls unrolling, and the soft tap of styluses on clay. Segment 43. The path between libraries and our dream. Tonight, there is a quiet path that joins the two libraries. We walk along it slowly, carrying with us the peaceful knowledge of both places. Segment 44. The endless library. This path leads to a library with no end, shelves of scrolls, rows of tablets, all glowing softly in the quiet. Segment 45. Rest in the library of time here. Time does not hurry. You may rest as long as you wish, surrounded by the gentle memory of the ancient world. Segment 46. The corridor of quiet steps in Alexandria. There was a long corridor, paved with smooth stone. The sound of footsteps here was soft, echoing gently under the high arches. Many students walked this path, on their way to the reading rooms. Segment 47. Scrolls of faraway land. Some scrolls told of distant kingdoms, of rivers that flowed for thousands of miles, of mountains so high their peaks touched the clouds, of cities built of shining stone. Reading them felt like traveling without moving. Segment 48. The smell of ink and papyrus. The scriptorium always carried a faint smell of black ink, freshly cut reeds, and smooth papyrus. For many, this scent became the very fragrance of learning. Segment 49. The garden of reflection behind the library. There was a small garden set aside for quiet reflection. Here olive trees offered shade, and a small fountain trickled gently into a basin. It was a place to think, away from the busyness of study. Segment 50. Gentle lessons by the sea. Sometimes teachers brought their students to the edge of the harbor. Sitting on stone benches, they spoke of philosophy, while ships moved slowly on the water nearby. Segment 51. Letters sent from the library. Scholars sometimes sent letters to other centers of learning. These letters traveled by ship or caravan, carrying news of discoveries and copies of precious works. Segment 52. The light of the reading lamps. As the day darkened, lamps were lit in the reading rooms. The golden glow made the scrolls shine softly, and the library took on a hushed evening calm. Segment 53. A walk at twilight. At twilight, the streets outside the library were calm. Shops closed their doors, and the smell of bread baking in clay ovens drifted on the air. Segment 54. The room of mathematics. One room in the library was filled with works on mathematics. Here were studies of numbers, geometry, and calculations of the stars. Students bent over their scrolls, deep in quiet thought. Segment 55. The gentle sound of copying in the copying halls. The quiet scratching of pens was like a steady rhythm. It never rushed, and it never stopped. Segment 56. A scholar from faraway traveler from distant lands arrived at the library. He brought with him a rare text, wrapped in soft cloth. It was welcomed, copied, and preserved among the other treasures. Segment 57. Crossing desert roads to Nineveh. Now our thoughts drift again eastward. Imagine the long desert roads, caravans of camels, and the slow journey towards Nineveh. Segment 58. The river beside Nineveh. Nineveh stood beside the Tigris River. Its waters flowed calmly, carrying small boats with baskets of goods and reflections of the city walls. Segment 59. The library's stone benches in Nineveh's palace. Stone benches lined the library walls. Here, scholars could sit quietly, reading tablets by the soft light from narrow windows. Segment 60. Tablets of ancient myths. Some tablets told of gods and heroes. They spoke of creation, of the great flood, and of journeys through distant lands. Each story was pressed in careful cuneiform signs. Segment 6. 1. The tablet of herbs in Nineveh. One tablet listed the names of herbs, their shapes, their colors, and the ways they could heal. A scribe had carefully pressed each detail as though preserving a garden in clay. Segment 62. The king's archivists. Stashablos archivists moved quietly between shelves, checking the order of the tablets. Their careful work kept the library organized so that knowledge could be found when needed. Segment 63. The quiet terrace of Nineveh's sunset. The terrace of the palace was a place of rest. From here, the view stretched over the river, turning golden in the evening light. Segment 6. For a student learns cuneiform, a small corner of the palace. A young student practiced cuneiform. His stylus tapped gently into the clay, forming lines and wedges. Each mark a step into the world of knowledge. Segment 65. The tablet of the moon. One tablet showed the phases of the moon, recorded for many years. Its surface was worn smooth, in places where many hands had held it. Segment 66. The library's couriers' messengers left the palace to bring tablets and writings from other cities. Their journeys were long, but each one returned with precious words for the library's shelves. Segment 67. The Room of Laws section of the library held the laws of the empire. Here were rules for trade, for farming, and for settling disputes. They were the quiet foundation of daily life. Segment 68. The archives of treaties nearby were shelves filled with agreements between kingdoms. Each tablet bore the marks of careful negotiation, now resting in the stillness of the library. Segment 69. The palace garden in bloom in spring. The gardens of Nineveh were full of flowers. The air was warm, and the fountains sparkled in the sunlight. Scholars sometimes walked here to think, their minds full of words and ideas. Segment 70. The night watch of Nineveh. Night, the palace grew quiet. A few guards walked the courtyards, their steps slow, while the library slept in the dark. Segment 71. A scroll travels east back in Alexandria. A copy of a rare scroll was sent eastward on a merchant ship. Knowledge moved quietly, just as the tide moved in and out of the harbor. Segment 7. To a tablet travels western Nineveh. A tablet was carefully packed in straw and sent westward. Perhaps it reached another library, where its words continued to be read. Segment 73. The shared sky, though far apart. Both libraries looked up at the same night sky. The stars above Alexandria were the same as those above Nineveh, quiet and eternal. Segment 74. The scribes' patience in both places. Scribes worked slowly. Their patience was the heartbeat of the libraries, and their steady work was how knowledge survived. Segment 75. A walk among the shelves. So imagine walking through the shelves past rows of scrolls in Alexandria, past rows of tablets in Nineveh, each one a voice from another time, waiting quietly to be heard. Segment 76. The shelf of ancient hymns in Alexandria. One shelf was filled with hymns to the gods. Some were sung in temples, others recited quietly during ceremonies. Their melodies still lingered in the soft ink of the scrolls. Segment 77. A scholar's daily routine. A scholar's day began at sunrise. He would wash, break his fast with bread and olives, and then walk slowly to the library, ready to spend the hours in quiet reading. Segment 78. The scroll of navigation. The scrolls in Alexandria were works on navigation. They described the winds, the stars, and the ways to travel safely across the seas. Segment 79. The cool shade of colonnades. The colonnades of the library offered cool shade from the midday sun. Students sometimes paused here, resting before returning to their studies. Segment 80. The room of music. There was also a room with writings about music, about instruments, melodies, and the way music could soothe the spirit. Segment 81. Quiet copying at dusk. At dusk, the scribes worked in the soft light of oil lamps. The world outside faded into darkness, but inside, the slow work of copying continued. Segment 8, to a scroll of healing waters. One scroll spoke of healing waters. Springs, rivers, and baths said to restore strength. It was read often, its edges worn smooth. Segment 83, the boat from Rhodes. A merchant boat from Rhodes arrived in Alexandria. Among its goods were scrolls in Greek, carefully wrapped in linen. They were welcomed into the library's collection. Segment 84, the morning in Nineveh. Morning began with soft light on the palace walls. The city slowly awoke, and the library's doors opened to another day of study. Segment 85, the tablet of builders. A tablet described the measurements of buildings, how to lay foundations, how to set stones, and how to create lasting walls. Segment 86, the garden path of the palace. Between the palace rooms, there were narrow garden paths. The scent of flowers followed anyone walking quietly between the courtyards. Segment 87, the room of dreams. Some tablets recorded dreams, visions seen in sleep, and the meanings people believed they held. Segment 88, the calm of afternoon. Study afternoons in the library were calm. The heat outside made the quiet rooms feel even more peaceful. Scholars read slowly, letting the hours pass like a gentle stream. Segment 89, the list of kings. A set of tablets in Nineveh listed the names of kings from long ago. Their reigns stretched back into the mist of history, each name a memory preserved. In clay. Segment 90, the shared silence of libraries, though built of different materials. Both libraries shared the same silence, a silence filled with thought, study, and the quiet sound of history being remembered. Segment 91, the scroll of distant islands in Alexandria. One scroll spoke of islands far away, their shores lined with palms, their harbors filled with unknown ships. It was read with quiet wonder, each word painting a far-off scene. Segment 92, the midday quiet of the library. At midday, Alexandria's library was still, the heat outside pressed against the walls, but inside, the thick stone kept the air cool. Segment 93, the scroll of old legends. One shelf held legends of ancient heroes. Their stories, though old, were copied again and again, so their names would not be forgotten. Segment 94, the scholars' small courtyard. The small courtyard within the library was used by scholars for quiet conversation. Here they shared ideas, while a small fountain bubbled softly nearby. Segment 95, the scrolls of philosophical works were kept in a separate section, texts by great thinkers, copied carefully for study. These were read slowly, each idea considered with patience. Segment 96, the quiet of evening. As evening approached, the sound of footsteps faded from the halls. The library settled into its nightly calm, the scrolls resting in their wooden shelves. Segment 97, the palace steps of Nineveh. Far away in Nineveh, broad steps led up to the palace. From here, the city stretched out towards the horizon, its rooftops glowing in the afternoon light. Segment 98, the tablet of star names. One tablet listed the names of the stars, both in the Assyrian language and in the tongues of other lands. It was a map of the heavens, pressed in clay. Segment 99, the quiet garden wall. A high wall surrounded the palace gardens. It kept the gardens still and safe, where rare flowers grew undisturbed. Segment 100, the room of farming records some. Tablets held records of the fields which crops were planted. When the rivers flooded, and how the harvest was measured each year. Segment 101. The slow work of repair when a tablet cracked. Scribes repaired it with care, pressing a copy into fresh clay so its words would not be lost. Segment 102. The scroll of seas and winds back in Alexandria. Sailors sometimes visited the library to read scrolls about winds, currents, and the routes of safe passage. Segment 103. The shaded portico. The shaded portico of the library was a favorite place for quiet walking. Its tall columns cast long, cool shadows over the smooth stone floor. Segment 104. The scrolls of healing prayers. Among the medical scrolls were gentle prayers, copied alongside remedies, blending faith and healing together. Segment 105. The gentle whisper of memory. Both libraries, though far apart, shared the same purpose: to keep memory alive, quietly, for all who would one day seek it. Segment 106. The scroll of ancient rivers in Alexandria. One scroll told of the great rivers, the Nile, the Euphrates, the Indus. Its words moved like gentle water, describing lands shaped by flowing streams. Segment 107. The soft sound of footsteps in the library's halls. Footsteps echoed softly, a steady rhythm that blended with the quiet turning of scrolls. Segment 108. The scroll of old medicines. A set of scrolls recorded ancient cures. Some remedies were herbal, others came from minerals, each written with care by healers of the past. Segment 109. The inner courtyard of the Mausionth inner courtyard was calm. Stone benches lined its edges, and a single olive tree grew in the center, its leaves rustling softly in the breeze. Segment 110. The scroll of seasons. One scroll described the seasons, how the sun moved, how the rains came, and how the earth responded each year. Segment 111. The palace roof of Nineveh. Nineveh, the palace roof, offered a view of the Tigris. Scholars sometimes came here at dusk, watching the river reflect the fading sky. Segment 112. The tablet of builders. Marks. A tablet described the symbols used by builders and craftsmen. It was a quiet record of skills passed down from master to apprentice. Segment 113. The soft rustle of palm leaves in the palace gardens. Palm leaves moved gently in the wind, casting dancing shadows on the stone paths. Segment 114. The tablet of festivals. One set of tablets listed the festivals of the year, days of music, feasting, and quiet prayers. Segment 115. The scribes. Careful arrangement. Scribes in Nineveh kept the tablets in careful order, arranging them so that any work could be found without delay. Segment 116. The scroll of distant markets in Alexandria. One scroll described markets of distant lands, the goods sold, the scents of spices, and the voices of merchants. Segment 117. The columns in the reading hall. Reading halls' tall columns rose high into the air, supporting a ceiling painted with soft patterns. They gave the room a feeling of calm and balance. Segment 118. The scroll of healing waters. Another scroll spoke of healing springs in faraway valleys. Travelers had written of their journeys there, their words flowing like quiet streams. Segment 119. The quiet of the evening lamps. As evening deepened, lamps glowed in the library, their soft light making the scrolls seem almost alive with quiet warmth. Segment 120. The shared path of knowledge, though separated by distance. Alexandria and Nineveh walked the same quiet path, preserving, copying, and sharing the wisdom of the world. Segment 121. The scroll of ancient bridges in Alexandria. A scroll spoke of bridges built in faraway lands. It described stone arches, wooden planks, and the gentle way people crossed them over rivers. Segment 122. The quiet of the upper gallery. The upper gallery of the library was rarely crowded. It looked down over the reading hall, and its silence felt even deeper, as if time slowed here. Segment 123. The scroll of gardens. One scroll described gardens of the world, terraces in Babylon, orchards in Persia, and small flowering courtyards in Greece. Segment 124. The scholar's afternoon. Rest in the afternoons. Some scholars paused to rest, sitting on shaded benches, listening to the distant hum of the city. Segment 125. The scroll of ancient cities. This scroll listed cities, long gone, each name a whisper of streets, walls, and people that once were. Segment 126. The gentle order of the library. Every scroll had its place, every tablet its shelf. The careful order kept the library peaceful, like a well-tended garden of knowledge. Segment 127. The tablet of river measurements in Nineveh. One tablet measured the Tigris River, its depth, its width, and its flow through the seasons. Segment 128. The cool shade of Nineveh's halls. The palace halls were cool even in summer. Their thick walls held the heat outside, while inside the library remained calm and still. Segment 129. The tablet of distant mountains. A tablet described mountains beyond the empire, their snow, their forests, and the rivers that began in their peaks. Segment 130. The garden pool. The palace garden, a small pool, reflected the sky. Its surface was so still that clouds drifted quietly across it. Segment 131. The scroll of voyages in Alexandria. A scroll recorded long voyages by sea. It told of calm waters and of ports filled with gentle welcomes. Segment 132. The scholars. Lanterns. Some scholars worked by lantern light, the flame steady, casting soft shadows over the scrolls. Segment 133. The scroll of temples. One scroll described temples in many lands, their tall columns, quiet courtyards, and the peaceful rituals held within them. Segment 134. The evening wind by the harbor at sunset. The wind by Alexandria's harbor was cool. It carried the smell of the sea and the soft creak of wooden ships at rest. Segment 135. The tablet of old stories in Nineveh. Some tablets told small stories, tales shared in markets and homes, preserved alongside grand histories. Segment 136. The palace path at night. At night, the path through the palace garden was lit by small lamps. The air was still, and the scent of flowers lingered. Segment 137. The scroll of healing stones in Alexandria. One scroll spoke of stones believed to bring comfort: smooth jasper, cool lapis lazuli, and pale quartz. Segment 138. The shared quiet across lands, though far apart. The library shared a quiet harmony. They both listened to the same silence of study and the same patient turning of pages. Segment 139. The scroll of festivals of the year. One scroll listed the festivals of the seasons: spring gatherings, summer feasts, autumn harvests, and winter celebrations. Segment 140. The glow of evening lampses. The lamps were lit each evening. The library glowed warmly, like a beacon in the calm of night. Segment 141. The tablet of peace treaties. Nineveh. A tablet described peace treaties, agreements made quietly between rulers, written to keep harmony. Segment 142. The still air of the archives. The archives were always still. Here, the air felt heavy with time, and each shelf seemed to hum softly with memory. Segment 143. The scroll of faraway stars in Alexandria. A scroll recorded the names of faraway stars, marking their places with care, as though mapping the quiet heavens. Segment 144. The gentle breath of the sea from the library's upper windows. The sea could be seen far below, its breath a constant, calming rhythm. Segment 145. The tablet of ancient songs in Nineveh. Some tablets held the words to old songs, their melodies long faded, but their verses still alive in clay. Segment 146. The scholars reached after hours of study. Scholars sometimes set their scrolls aside, closing their eyes in the quiet, letting their thoughts drift. Segment 147. The scroll of gentle rains. One scroll spoke of rains in distant lands, soft showers on green hills, and the way the earth drank quietly. Segment 148. The deep quiet of night. At night, both libraries rested. Only the sound of the wind outside and the faint creak of wooden beams moved in the silence. Segment 149. The endless path of memory. The memory of these libraries is an endless path, stretching through time, carrying knowledge softly from one age to the next. Segment 150. Closing the libraries at restand. So our story comes to rest. Alexandria sleeps by the sea, Nineveh rests by the river. Their scrolls and tablets are quiet now, but their voices remain, whispering gently through history. Close your eyes, and let the stillness of their halls become the stillness of your own thoughts. The libraries are quiet, and so are you. Good night.